Somewhere out past everything you can imagine, a machine older than most of your parents is running on less power than the bulb inside your fridge. So far away that a single message sent to it takes almost a full day just to arrive. And right now, this very moment, it is picking up something no human ear has ever heard before. This is the true story of Voyager 1, and where it stands today, in 2026, is far stranger than anything the people who built it ever imagined back in 1977. When it lifted off in September of that year, riding alongside its twin, Voyager 2, the goal was surprisingly modest. Fly past Jupiter, fly past Saturn, snap some photos, send them home, and quietly retire after about 5 years of work. Nobody on that engineering team thought these two probes would still be talking to Earth half a century later, let alone that they'd end up leaving the solar system entirely. The whole mission was only possible because of a planetary lineup that happens once every 175 years or so, a moment when Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune all sat on the same side of the sun at once. That rare alignment let scientists plot a path where each planet's gravity would sling the spacecraft toward the next one, a route NASA nicknamed the Grand Tour. Even the order of the launches hinted that something unusual was brewing. Voyager 2 actually left Earth first, but 16 days later, Voyager 1 launched on a quicker trajectory and overtook its sibling. Just 13 days after liftoff, from more than 11 million kilometers out, Voyager 1 turned its camera backward and captured something nobody had ever seen before. Earth and the Moon sitting together in a single frame, our entire planet shrunk down to a tiny blue speck floating in total darkness. Even that early on, the mission was already turning routine milestones into moments that made people rethink their place in the universe. By the start of 1979, as Voyager 1 closed in on Jupiter, it revealed a world unlike anything ground-based telescopes had ever shown. A massive planet wrapped in violent storms, brutal radiation, and a family of moons complicated enough to look like a solar system of its own. What it found at Jupiter and later at Saturn reshaped planetary science almost overnight, uncovering faint rings nobody had known existed, moons nobody had cataloged, and conditions no telescope on Earth could have predicted. But the single most important decision of the whole mission happened at Saturn, when engineers chose to send Voyager 1 close past Titan, Saturn's largest moon, to study its thick, mysterious atmosphere. That choice came at a permanent cost. Saturn's gravity bent Voyager 1's path sharply out of the flat plane where the planets orbit, meaning it could never visit another world again. From that point on, it stopped being a planetary explorer and became something else entirely, a boundary breaker, racing forward as the fastest object humanity had ever built, aimed straight at the outer edge of our sun's territory. But before any of that outer system drama played out, the people back on Earth made a decision that had nothing to do with physics at all, one that would end up traveling farther than anyone alive today ever will. That decision is where the next part of this story picks up, and it's one of the most human choices in the entire history of space exploration. Attached to the side of each Voyager spacecraft is a golden phonograph record about the size of a dinner plate, holding a carefully chosen snapshot of life on Earth. Greetings recorded in 55 different languages ride on that disc, along with natural sounds like thunder, wind, and whale song. More than 100 images encoded as data showing landscapes, animals, and ordinary human life, and 90 minutes of music pulled from cultures and centuries across our planet. The idea, championed by a small team that included astronomer Carl Sagan, was almost absurdly hopeful for a mission that was only supposed to last 5 years. The thinking was that this record might one day drift close enough to another civilization to be found and understood, and that even if it never was, sending it out was worth doing on its own terms. Every chapter of Voyager 1's story, from its first photograph of Earth and the Moon together to whatever moment its last instrument finally goes quiet, has that same golden disk riding along the whole way, an artifact nobody expected to still matter 50 years later, quietly outlasting nearly every other part of the mission's original plan. Then came Jupiter, and the flyby alone tore apart decades of assumptions in a matter of days. What had looked from Earth like a plain, distant gas giant turned out to be a violent, constantly shifting world surrounded by moons that behaved almost like their own miniature solar system. Voyager 1 sent back images of faint rings nobody had ever detected before, along with several newly discovered small moons circling the planet. Jupiter's Great Red Spot, long seen through backyard telescopes as nothing more than a reddish smudge, was finally viewed up close and confirmed to be a storm larger than Earth itself, spinning counterclockwise, a centuries-old atmospheric monster still raging across the planet's surface to this day. But the biggest shock came from a much smaller world, Io Voyager 1 detected active volcanoes erupting right on its surface, the first time humanity had ever witnessed active volcanism anywhere beyond our own planet. Io wasn't some dead, frozen rock drifting through space. It was violently alive, and it remains the most geologically active place known anywhere in the solar system. Then there was Europa, its cracked, icy shell hinting at something even stranger hidden underneath. The images Voyager sent back suggested a vast ocean of liquid water buried beneath kilometers of ice, quietly planting an idea that still drives planetary science today, that one of the best places to search for life might not be a planet at all, but a frozen moon orbiting a much larger world. Once Jupiter's work was done, Voyager 1 used the planet's gravity like a slingshot, accelerating outward toward Saturn and arriving in 1980, carrying more momentum than any spacecraft built before it. And what waited for it, there would turn out to be just as strange and just as important, reshaping how scientists understood not just Saturn, but the very chemistry that might make distant worlds capable of supporting life. Saturn, long imagined as an elegant, simple planet with one neat ring circling it, turned out to be far more complicated than anyone had guessed. What looked from Earth like a single thin band exploded on closer inspection into hundreds, even thousands, of narrow layered ring structures, constantly shifting rather than sitting fixed in place. Voyager 1 also found several new moons at Saturn, including Mimas, whose massive crater gave it an eerie resemblance to a small, moon-sized battle station drifting silently through space. But the most important encounter by far was with Titan. Voyager 1 couldn't actually see Titan's surface, since its thick atmosphere was nearly opaque to visible light. But by studying what that atmosphere was made of, scientists uncovered something remarkable. Titan is so cold that methane behaves there the way water behaves here on Earth, existing as a solid, a liquid, and a gas all at once. That single discovery opened the door to the idea of lakes and rivers existing on a world far from the sun, an idea that reshaped how scientists think about chemistry and the possibility of life across the entire solar system. That close pass by Titan came at a price, though, since Saturn's gravity permanently bent Voyager 1's path out of the flat plane where the planets orbit, ending its career as a planet visitor for good. In exchange, it left behind discoveries so significant that the solar system itself no longer felt familiar to the scientists studying it. Years of quiet travel through what looked like empty space followed, until Voyager 1 finally reached a region no human-made object had ever touched. On August 25th, 2012, its instruments picked up something extraordinary. A sudden drop in charged particles streaming from the sun, paired at that exact same moment with a sharp spike in high-energy particles arriving from deep within the galaxy. This wasn't a slow fade. It was an abrupt shift, almost as if the spacecraft had physically struck an invisible wall. Voyager 1 had crossed the heliopause, the boundary where the sun's solar wind finally loses its strength and true interstellar space begins. Scientists had long assumed this region would behave like a gentle, gradual gradient, with the sun's influence slowly thinning out across a wide stretch of space. The data told a completely different story. The sun's protective bubble, known as the heliosphere, ended sharply, forming a real, measurable membrane where plasma from the sun collided directly with plasma from the space between the stars. In that instant, Voyager 1 stopped being a spacecraft shaped by our star's environment and became something governed instead by the galaxy itself. The first time in history a human-made object had physically pushed past the sun's reach. And crossing that invisible boundary didn't just mark a new location for the spacecraft. It revealed something nobody had expected, that the space between stars isn't the silent, empty void most people picture when they imagine deep space crossing. That boundary revealed that interstellar space is not empty and not silent. From more than 24 billion kilometers away, Voyager 1 recorded a steady cosmic hum sitting at around 3 kilohertz, a signal that lasted for nearly 3 years straight. Scientists described it as a thin, metallic tone, almost as if the space between stars were quietly resonating in the background. That signal turned out to be interstellar plasma waves, and by studying it, researchers could actually measure the density of the material drifting between stars, effectively turning sound into a tool for mapping something completely invisible to the eye. At the same time, Voyager's readings showed that the interstellar magnetic field out there was far stronger than anyone had modeled, 2 to 3 times more intense than expected, pressing against the heliosphere with nearly 10 times more force than predicted. That finding means our entire solar system sits inside a tightly compressed bubble, constantly pushed and reshaped by the surrounding galaxy, rather than floating freely through open space. Voyager 1's data also helped confirm that the Sun sits inside something called the local bubble, a cavity roughly 1,000 light-years across, carved out by ancient supernova explosions long before humans ever existed. That bubble shields our solar system from a large amount of interstellar dust and changes how cosmic radiation reaches Earth, meaning that without most of us ever realizing it, life here has been sitting inside a kind of natural cosmic shelter this whole time. It's worth pausing on just how strange this makes the boundary itself. Before Voyager 1 actually crossed it, most models treated the heliopause as a soft, blurry edge, something a spacecraft would drift through gradually over months without any single dramatic moment marking the transition. Instead, the readings from August 25th, 2012, showed something closer to a sharp membrane, with charged particle counts from the Sun collapsing within a matter of hours rather than fading slowly across weeks. Scientists studying the handoff realized they were looking at something closer to a genuine physical wall than a fuzzy zone, a place where two different kinds of plasma, one shaped by our star and one shaped by the wider galaxy, meet and resist mixing into each other. That sharpness became one of the most cited surprises in the entire mission's later career, reshaping textbook diagrams of the solar system almost overnight and forcing physicists to rebuild their models of how stars interact with the space surrounding them. Voyager 2 followed its twin across that same boundary 6 years later, in November of 2018, arriving at a different point along the heliopause and giving scientists a second, independent measurement of the same structure from an entirely different angle. Comparing the two crossings let researchers confirm that the heliopause isn't a perfectly smooth sphere surrounding the Sun, but something closer to an irregular, dented shape, pushed and pulled unevenly by the pressure of interstellar wind blowing against it from one general direction as the Sun moves through the galaxy. Having two independent data points, gathered years apart and from different locations, turned a single strange measurement into an actual confirmed feature of our solar system's outer shape, something no telescope on Earth could ever have detected on its own. Now here's where the story finally catches up to today, because what's happening to Voyager 1 in 2026 is its own kind of quiet drama, and it's a race against time that's still unfolding right now, Dot. The spacecraft is currently sitting somewhere around 25.5 billion kilometers from Earth, about 170 times the distance between Earth and the Sun, still moving outward at roughly 17 kilometers every second. A radio signal now takes close to 23 hours to travel one way between Voyager 1 and mission control, which means a single round trip, a command sent out, and a confirmation sent back, eats up nearly 2 full days. On November 18th, 2026, at a precisely calculated moment, Voyager 1 is expected to cross a genuinely historic threshold, becoming the first human-made object to sit a full light day away from Earth, a distance so vast that light itself, the fastest thing in the universe, needs an entire 24 hours just to cross it. But getting there is costing the spacecraft almost everything it has left. Both Voyager probes run on radioisotope thermoelectric generators, devices that turn the heat from slowly decaying plutonium into usable electricity. That power source has been fading by about 4 watts every single year since launch, a slow, steady drain that never stops and can't be reversed. To stretch the mission as long as possible, engineers have had to shut down instruments one by one in a carefully chosen order, sacrificing pieces of the spacecraft's senses to keep its heart beating. Voyager 1's cameras went dark back in 1990, right after they captured the mission's famous final portrait of the solar system. Its plasma science instrument stopped working reliably by 2007. Its ultraviolet spectrometer, useful for far longer than most expected, was finally switched off in 2016. The cuts have only gotten more serious recently. NASA turned off Voyager 1's cosmic ray subsystem in February of 2025 to conserve power, and then, in early 2026, turned off its low-energy charged particle instrument as well. According to NASA's mission team, that leaves only 2 working science instruments still active on Voyager 1 as of this year: the magnetometer, which measures the magnetic field around the spacecraft, and the plasma wave subsystem, the very instrument responsible for picking up that eerie interstellar hum. Kareem Badarudin, the Voyager mission manager at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, has been blunt about what these decisions actually mean, saying that shutting down a working science instrument is never anyone's first choice, but that it remains the best option available to keep the spacecraft alive. Engineers aren't simply letting the mission fade quietly, though. NASA's team has been developing an ambitious software fix, nicknamed internally as the Big Bang, aimed at squeezing more efficient operation out of the aging spacecraft, and potentially even allowing some previously shut down instruments to be brought back online for short stretches. It's an unusual kind of optimism for a machine pushing 50 years old, running on hardware weaker than the processor inside a basic calculator, drifting through an environment where temperatures sit close to absolute zero, and where cosmic radiation constantly threatens to damage what little circuitry remains functional. The logic behind that kind of software gamble comes down to a simple trade-off engineers face every single year now. Every watt of power still available on Voyager 1 has to be rationed between keeping its heaters running so delicate components don't freeze and crack in the cold of interstellar space, and keeping its remaining instruments powered up long enough to keep sending back readings. Shut off too many heaters too soon and critical hardware could fail outright. Keep every instrument running too long and the spacecraft could simply run out of power years earlier than necessary. NASA's own internal estimates from 2025 suggested that without any further conservation moves, Voyager 1 might have had only a handful of months of usable power left before mission controllers would have had to declare an end to operations altogether. With careful watt-by-watt rationing instead, the team now believes at least one science instrument could realistically keep functioning into the 2030s, stretching the mission nearly 6 decades past its original 5-year plan, though officials are careful to note that any unexpected hardware failure could still cut that timeline shorter without warning. None of this is guaranteed to work forever, and mission leaders have been honest about that. Suzanne Dodd, the Voyager project manager, has explained that if the propellant lines on either spacecraft freeze, causing their antennas to drift away from pointing at Earth, the mission would essentially end immediately, since there would be no way to send a signal back to a receiver that isn't listening in the right direction anymore. The team's current hope is to keep the magnetometer and plasma wave subsystem running on both spacecraft, along with the cosmic ray subsystem on Voyager 2, letting the